Who's that? Is that my witchlings here? I bet you miss me because I missed you so much. And today I'm going to talk about one of the things that I've been up to since I've been away, and that is the recovery of soul shards. I bet you're asking yourself, unless you already know, what is a soul shard? And I'm going to talk about that today. So first, let's explain what a soul shard is, and then I'm going to talk you through some of the things I've learned and my process on working through a couple of mine. In order to discuss soul shards, I think it's also important to talk about shadow work. I can make a separate video about how I personally go through shadow work. If you're interested, please leave a comment. But basically what shadow work is you have a feeling that you don't really like. So let's say somebody looks prettier than you and you're envious. So you might ask yourself, what is the feeling that I felt? I felt envy. And then you might ask yourself, why? And when you get the answer to that why, ask the next why. So why do I feel jealous of Tabitha? Well, Tabitha has beautiful teeth. Why does that bother me? Well, I don't feel like my teeth are as beautiful. Why does that bother me? A kid in 3rd grade made fun of me for having crooked teeth. Why does that bother me? Because at that point I was trying to get him to like me or something, and I felt like that really got in the way of myself and my confidence. So maybe the solution is I felt lack of confidence when I was in 3rd grade, so I need to nurture that 3rd grade self and tell her that she's really cool, and it doesn't matter what her teeth look like, she's cool anyway. That's not a personal story, but it's just what came to my brain. So that's kind of how shadow work works. It's a psychological thing that you need to continually do to understand yourself and become a higher form of yourself and basically a more well-rounded, psychologically sound person. Shadow work is when you have an event that is so difficult to deal with or traumatic that you actually push that self away and keep it away from your own self. So this happens a lot with people who have PTSD, who have very bad traumatic experiences. They may take that memory and block it. They may take that self and push it away because they are not able to handle those feelings, that difficulty at that time. Myself, I have currently worked through 3 soul shards, and it has not been easy, and I've had a really tough time, and I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit more about that. I'm going to talk about the reason why I am beginning to work on my soul shards. So I didn't know that they were a thing until recently, until I started working on them. I never even heard of a soul shard before. But how it ended up happening is I have been working with some dragon energies, and there's a dragon that I work with that is earth energy. And she is a good dragon to start with because she keeps you grounded and she makes sure that you have a good foundation. So in order to do that foundation work, I needed to discover that I had soul shards that were missing so that I could have a good solid foundation of myself and be a strong witch. The way that this came to me is one evening when I was falling asleep. I have an entity that helps teach me things, and she stopped me because as I was falling to sleep, I had a memory of something that happened that day with my friends that I didn't like, and I didn't want to keep that memory. So I started to delete that memory before I went to sleep. She stopped me to make me realize what I was doing. And it wasn't a memory that was really important or anything. It was just something that was inconvenient or bothered me, and I just wanted to get rid of it. She stopped me from deleting it, and then asked, "You need to see what else you've deleted." So I had some theories about some things that I had broken from myself, tried to ignore, and tried to stop myself from reliving those memories. And one of the big ones was I had, I'm going to put a quick trigger warning here, just you can fast forward about, I was sexually assaulted when I was in college. I was 19 years old, and that was one of the things that was difficult for me, that I had said, oh, I'm such a big girl, I've grown past that, but I'd grown past it because I hadn't actually faced it. So you can come back in now. I'll try not to discuss that anymore. I had this traumatic event that I was thinking I could work through, and I thought, well, I'll try to work on this because I know I've deleted some of the memories about it because I did not want to have to deal with it or work through it. I just wanted to say, like, I'm bigger now, I'm better, it's in the past, I'm awesome me, I've gotten over all that. But I had it. And as I started to remember some things, I started to like figure out like, well, I've pushed it back so far did it even happen to me. So I went and found out that this person was a real person. The person really went to jail. Like, this is real. This really happened to me. And once I had realized that, I started to feel an entity around me. This entity ended up being a soul shard. So to explain the entity, I'm going to go back to when I was about 21 years old. When I was 21 years old, I was back from college, and I was hanging out with an ex-boyfriend, my boyfriend, a lot of other friends were hanging out, and I started to feel really overwhelmed. There was a point where I didn't know how to process my feelings, so I took a blanket and ran out to the forest, because one of the ways that I process myself is I go run to the forest. So I took my blanket and my pillow, ran out to the forest, and one of my friends saw me. And she found my boyfriend and was like, you need to go rescue her from going into the forest. So he came and he rescued me, and but I needed that. And the fact that I had broken myself from going to do that to process my own feelings, I had found that going to process my own feelings was wrong. And I went inside, and there was a dark energy around me. I didn't know if it was a demon. I'm gonna put a little picture here of kind of what it looked like. So it's like a really tall thing, maybe like 7-8 feet tall. It has really long claws, and it would always stand behind me and put its claws here in my shoulders. It had a mouth that was really big with big teeth, kind of like Venom from Spider-Man. So he kind of looked like that, but he always stood behind me. And when I would go to sleep, he would lay this to the left side of my bed. And I had my ex-boyfriend then, he liked to be spiritualist person, and he was able to feel the energy of this entity, point out exactly where it was, and identify it. So it was a feelable, real energy that people were able to feel. So I didn't know what it was at the time, but it didn't feel bad. It felt like it was scary. I was really scared, but it felt more like the energy of a brother or somebody that you knew a long time ago. And I think it was actually that soul shard knew that I needed it at that time. I needed to bring it back inside of me, and it was offering to do so. But because I didn't know, I wasn't a practicing witch at the time. I was actually Christian at the time, so I was scared, and I sent it away. I used a Bible verse, and I sent it away. But I felt really bad, and I missed it. And I'd actually been able to feel it a couple times since. I'd call on it when something was bad, and I'd feel it. I'd feel it there with me, feel it behind me. So this entity starts to come back as I remember these feelings, as I remember that this actually happened to me. This is real. This is a real thing that took place in my life, and I need to acknowledge it. So I started to feel the energy behind me. And one of my friends, his name is Drake from the Working Dragon Mystic, he was able to identify that, in fact, it was a soul shard, or a combination of them, that there were several soul shards that were trying to come back to me. He was able to tell me that I have quite a few. I have probably about 15. I've done 3 so far, so I got a lot of work to do. But he was able to see that there were soul shards missing from me, and that this thing wasn't bad. It was myself coming back. Now we get into my first big mistake. So I knew that I needed to work on only one soul shard at a time, but the problem was that they were merging. They were coming together and forming themselves into these singular entities. So this person I called the Dark Passenger, this shadowy figure that would stay behind me, I thought it was just one shard, but I was wrong. It was actually a lot of shards. And that's when I started to get really, really dark. Because I was trying to, I thought, just understand this one soul shard. So I would just sit with it and stare into its eyes, and its face would elongate, and its mouth would open to be an open, gaping hole. And I just was trying to relive and just understand it and just sit with it. And I just got darker and darker and darker. I even did some self-harming. And then I knew it was an emergency, and I told my friends, finally, like, I'm not okay. Like, I'm not okay. If I didn't have children, I would just like to stop living. Like, it was really, really bad. So this first thing is that I learned is that wasn't just one shard. That was a lot. And what I had to do is I went to my astral space. I went to my astral sanctum, and I sat with the shards. I had one that presented itself as a fiery, demonic like creature, and he was in there too. And I took them and I broke them apart. So I basically, what I did, they had an illusion on top of them that made them look like the entities that I perceived them to be. So I eliminated that and made them present themselves as shards. So the way that they look is they're like little broken pieces of a black mirror is how they look to me. And I was able to erase that image that I saw and make them look like only the shards that they were. I actually have a picture of what this looks physically. So all these shards were trying to come at me all at one time, and I actually took a picture right here. I don't know if you can see it very well, but I was on a work call. Are you there? Would you give me a high five? No, okay. And in the video, I could see arms moving. I could see them moving around me all over the place. And I took a picture real quick, and my friend kind of like photoshopped it so you could see it a bit better. But they were actually like behind me and fighting and like breaking each other. But I only saw the one. Another thing that was really helpful is I went to visit one of my friends in the astral, and they were each able to see that there were about 6 shards around me. And I thought it was only 2. So or just one. Like I would bring over just one of my shard characters. I would just bring over the Dark Passenger, the one that with the long claws that would go on in my shoulders. I would just bring him with me. And they would say there's actually 6. I can see them. They look like little eraser marks is kind of how they look in the astral, to them at least. When I finally understood that, I was able to break them apart and finally do them one at a time. Another thing I did is I got a therapist. So I also have a therapist because I was in a very, very bad place. And I am pairing her with my magical work. I've explained to her kind of what my practice is, what my goal is with trying to recover these soul shards. And she's working with me on those and being a really good partner. Like she's actually really helpful and is trying to help me slow down, because I'm one that wants to just go, do them all, get them all done at once, just bowl yourself through that china shop. So she's been really helpful for me on that. And I have thankfully not been so dark, and I haven't had those feelings anymore now that I've been able to break them up. So now I'm going to kind of go through what each of these soul shards are that I've worked through to kind of help explain that they might not be that big of a deal, just it was a big deal to you at the time. So once I was able to break apart the shards and just get one at a time, the first shard I worked through was when I was about 8 years old. It was a memory of me being in my grandmother's basement. So I'm with her in her basement and we're folding laundry. As I fold the laundry, she gets mad at me because I didn't fold them right. So I tell her, well, I don't know how to fold laundry, but that's actually wrong. That's not true. I learned how to fold laundry, but just the way my parents do it, not the way that she does. As an adult looking back, she was too immature to explain, oh, you just need to learn the way that I do it, and then we'll be okay. Instead, she would hit me with a ruler. So I remember being really upset, and I think that's why I got hit with a ruler, was because it wasn't me. I wasn't the one that did the bad thing. I needed to remember that it's okay to blame when blame is due. So explaining to her, you need to teach me because you're an adult and I'm a child, that's something that I can do for myself. I can take that 8-year-old child and defend it. When somebody treats me like a fool, I can say, no, you are the fool, and defend myself because I'm defending that 8-year-old me. So that first shard was folding laundry in my grandma's basement and realizing that I can stand up for myself and blame when blame is needed. So when somebody actually does something wrong, I can bring that up and not just put it all on myself, because I tend to just put it all onto my own shoulders rather than putting blame where it's needed. The second soul shard was running to the forest. So that's when I had that memory of being 21 years old, and I was having a lot of feelings and I needed to go be isolated by myself and run to the forest. So when I was little, this is something I did all the time. I'd always run out to the forest to figure out my complex emotions, whatever they were at the time, and I would figure myself out, then come back and deal with it appropriately. And that's something that I used to do, and by discovering the soul shard, that I had broken that part of myself off because I thought it was wrong to go and deal with it myself. Now I know it's totally okay to go deal with it myself. So now when I have a complex emotion, I'll go to the forest, I'll go to the river, go somewhere in nature where I can be private and be on my own. And I'll go ahead and deal with those emotions and then come back once I'm ready. The third soul shard was a much bigger deal. The third one that I worked on, which I'm now breaking afterwards because it was such a big deal, was that event that I spoke of earlier that I had the trigger warning for. So for this one, what I did first is I hung out with the 19-year-old self who had this happen from before that happened. So I got to know that 19-year-old, have a good time with her. We had tea together. We had dancing together. We did a lot of really fun stuff together. I had her come along with my life, meet my guides, meet my husband, my babies, so that she would know who we are now, because we're really cool now. Another thing that I did do is I went to that self and explained body autonomy. I explained the proper sex talk about this is your body, you are in charge of it, how to say no, those kind of things. I had that talk with myself and allowed myself to, told myself that you're allowed to have pleasure, you're allowed to appreciate your own body, those kind of things. I had that talk with my younger self, and that was really therapeutic. After a while of doing this, maybe a week or so, I went to actually relive the events. So I did. I don't recommend doing that always, but for this one, it was important because I was able to remember how many times I said no. I was very, very clear about the no. So that for me was really helpful. I always blamed myself for not saying no enough, but reliving it, I said no plenty enough. So that blame for myself, I was able to get rid of that by reliving, and I don't think I would have been able to do that without. There's some events that I will not relive, and this one, I had some triggers that I now know where they come from, so that was a helpful bit of information. Reliving isn't always necessary, but for me, this one was necessary to relive. So once I had relived that memory, I was really angry, and I did do a curse on that boy. So that boy has been cursed. Another thing I did do is when I came back from that memory and combined with that soul shard, I became a totally different creature. So imagine a dryad, so like a tree person, but instead of bark, it's made of coal, like a burnt coal, black. And inside of that tree, you can see there's a fire burning. And that's what I looked like. I had long claws. I had red burning eyes. I was just a fire monster. I was a fiery goddess, a goddess of fire and destruction when I came back. And I couldn't get rid of that. So I was hanging out with Odin and that dragon of earth. Her name is Terra Fauna. They actually took me to Yggdrasil, the tree of life, opened it up and put me inside of Yggdrasil to ground. So the energies of Yggdrasil flowed some of that energy out of me. And it was a lot. It was a ton of energy flowing through me. But by doing that, I was able to keep my own self more controlled and not just be that fiery, angry self. Afterwards, for the next couple days, I kept on flipping back and forth between my normal self and that fire goddess self. And until I just had so much energy and fire built up in me that I just burnt. I burnt my energy off, and I just made the whole of wherever I was in the astral, I made it burn up, burnt so much fire out. And I did another curse, and I was just so angry and burning and burning and burning. And I burnt so much energy off that I actually got myself physically sick, and I got a cold. So I'm getting over cold. But now that I've done that, I still, at the end, feel like it might be helpful to actually do that normal shadow work. So writing out how I feel, where I'm at now, and what angers me. And I might not ever get to the end of that shadow work, and that's okay. But anytime I'm triggered, something comes up that reminds me of that, I don't have to go through all that again, because that part of me is still here. I have merged it back with my soul. When I have those feelings, when I'm triggered, when something happens that reminds me of those events, I know why, and I can shadow work about it. I can write about this is triggering me because of these events, and I'm bigger than that, and I'm strong because I'm together, because I'm all of me now. Not all. I mean, that part is all of me. I still have a lot more shards to do, but still, that part of me is now still part of me. It is me, and I can do it. I can do the normal shadow work like anybody else would. I'm not missing that soul shard. If you have the idea that there could be soul shards, I would go ahead and have your guides help you with that. My guides have been trying to help me get back my soul shards since I was probably like 17. So I got more that I haven't done yet. My guides always took me to this place where I have some soul shards housed, and I'm not done with those yet. Those ones I haven't even touched. In this particular location, there's at least 3 shards there that I haven't been able to get to yet. This is going to be a continued process, and I hope one day to have all of my shards be a part of me, but sometimes it might not even happen. But I'm going to give it a try and try to be the fullest, biggest Melangle that I can be and have all my soul shards back. If you are working through soul shards, I do highly recommend pairing it with therapy, because a lot of times that breaking of yourself is because of some form of trauma, something that was really, really, really bad. And sometimes the therapist can really help get you through it and see when there's red flags. If there's something that could harm you, if you could actually be mentally hurt from reliving, those are something that a therapist can guide you through, and I'm really grateful for mine. Be sure to hang out with friends and tell them what you're doing. If you're going to be recovering a soul shard, you need to tell your significant others. You need to tell, if you're hanging out with your parents, tell your parents like, hey, I'm working through this mentally, please be with me, if you have a relationship like that with them. If you don't have a good support system, please wait until you do, or get a therapist would be my recommendation. Had it not been for my friends, oh, here's another channel, my friend Peachy from Magick Girl 999. She is one of my instrumental friends in making sure that I was okay through this process. She has been there to hold my hand, give me tips on working through her own personal things, and I would not have been able to be as successful or do as much as I could without them. It was so critical to have that support system and make sure they knew what I was doing. So before I would go and get a shard, I'd tell them, hey, I'm working on this shard. If I'm just getting to know it, I would tell them, hey, I'm getting to know it. If I'm reliving it, I tell them, hey, I'm going to go relive this memory, and tell them when I'm going to be back so that they could be there just in case I needed them. And that's really important to have. I would recommend writing down your process so that if something does work really well for you, that you can do it again if there's another soul shard, or if you have another traumatic event in the future. Like, let's say you have a car accident and you get hurt and then you break that part off from yourself because you just can't handle it. You know how to get it back because you've done this before. You're a pro. You've got this process that worked really well for you. So keep a note of that. You can keep it in a book of shadows. You can keep it in a book of mirrors, or just in a journal, just to kind of help yourself remember how you process those. Well, I hope my experiences have been helpful. If you would like to discuss with each other how to work through these in the comments, that would be super helpful. But because this is such a delicate topic, I will say I'm going to curate the comments here, and if anybody does come in a way that is hurtful or aggressive, I will be removing you, because soul shards are a very vulnerable place. So just heads up, if you want to get mad, this is not the place. So I will be making sure that the comments are helpful and loving down below, and I am here for you. If you're dealing with a soul shard, I know it's incredibly hard and it hurts and it's awful, but I'm here for you and I love you, and I hope you have other people in your network that will help you too. I love you so much, and I've missed you, and I hope to have some new stuff out for you soon. But until then, keep witching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and have a wonderful day. Bye, Witchling.